How you doing, wrestling fans? And welcome to another edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast. We are the only wrestling podcast that brings you back 30 years with vintage audio featuring some of the biggest names of that time. This show is no exception. The Pro Wrestling Spotlight covered all the news, stories, breaking developments that happened in real time. And now we get to relive those moments right here on this podcast. Today, we will review the shows which aired on 1440 WNYG AM in Babylon, New York on November the 6th, 1993, and our very last show on WNYG, which aired on November 27th, 1993. It was our last broadcast until August 28th of 1994. Before I bring Marsh on, I'd like to plug our Patreon account. Over 200 of our shows exist on Patreon, and some exclusive audio content, which you will have access to. And we'll talk a little bit about one of those pieces that were recorded from the Howard Stern show that you'll be able to listen to on Patreon in just a second. $5 a month gets you in the door. For that level, you get the entire archives of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, 200 plus shows, all of the other vintage audio. We just put up more content of some 1970s WWF, and there's so much more there. Just check it out, patreon.com/John Arezzi, and that membership really helps us with the production cost for this program, so I hope you check it out today. Patreon.com/John Arezzi. Let's bring our friend Marsh on. Marsh, how are you today?
Doing pretty good. Doing good. Staying busy.
Another week in paradise.
Yeah. Yeah. We had to push back recording just because of how insane my week's been. And then now it's like, okay, I got to record this and then immediately jump into the next thing. And then,
yeah.
But it's all going to get done on time.
Well, that's what you've always done. So it's definitely appreciated by us. And we look forward to getting into what really is the last couple of shows that I did before leaving the air. And we have two to cover today.
1.5.
Yeah, because the first one, we don't have the second side, right?
Yeah, the first one just kind of ends.
It kind of ended like... well, I guess we'll save that one till we actually have the final show. It ends kind of like the ending of The Sopranos.
Yeah.
You don't know what the frig is going to happen.
Yeah, just goes black. But yeah, it was like 1.5. And then I also listened to the Howard Stern show to see if there's anything from there to play, and did not find anything to play.
Let's talk about that for a second on the Howard Stern appearance that took place. I believe it was October the 25th. 93. It was the morning of the first day of the convention, the last convention I promoted. And Fred the Elephant Boy was gracious enough to get us a booking on the Howard Stern show, brought Medusa and Malaya Osaka there. But when you listen to it, and the entire thing is up for patrons, if you want to go to patreon.com/John Arezzi, that broadcast is on there. It's about a half hour of that segment. But listening to it, it really was Howard Stern of the 90s. He was very all about, he never respected wrestling, making fun of Fred the Elephant Boy, his sexual comments towards Medusa and Malaya Osaka, really nothing about wrestling other than Howard being Howard back then. And it was, I know you even played a portion of it, or if not all of it, for Medusa, and she wasn't really happy with it. And after listening to it, I wasn't really happy with it. So if you want to hear it, just go to patreon.com. If you're a Howard Stern fan, you'll appreciate it. I am a Howard Stern fan, always have been, from his beginning days to even present time. I mean, he's an incredible interview, but he's not the same guy he was 30 years ago. He changed so much.
Yeah. I think Medusa handled herself very well in it.
Oh, she definitely
did. Yeah. But I do think that like you, me, and her all listened to it and kind of collectively were like, yeah, let's not revisit this too deeply.
There's no need for it. I mean, it was kind of the only audio from that convention weekend, because that's a whole mystery as well. I don't feel, because of the way that convention turned out, I didn't really even harp on it on this show very much. I don't think. I just kind of like, all right, let's get over that. That's done.
Yeah, our second clip, you go into a couple things that we'll ask about, but yeah. So what I did want to know about the Howard Stern stuff was, did you ask Fred the Elephant Boy about doing it, or did he offer up?
Uh, I had been advertising on the Stern Show for this convention.
Oh,
Um, I actually had done that, I think, for almost every convention. I'd do live reads with Howard, and I'd also do live reads with WFAN Mike and the Mad Dog show. They were very costly spots, but with Fred's connection there, and Fred had Cactus Jack on previously, asked him to check with Gary Delabate and the producer, and they said yes. I guess they wanted to do a gimmick, or kind
yeah,
of a deal with Fred and bringing in two attractive female wrestlers, and then Howard just went off and did his thing,
yeah.
but he didn't take it seriously. That's for sure. I wasn't allowed to speak. I was there. I'd stayed up all night long because that show was a, early morning show. So I didn't even
Mm,
sleep going into it. And I was just extremely tired. And of course, Medusa and Malay Osaka had to wrestle that night.
yeah. Were you in the room or just there?
I was in the room. I
Oh,
was there, but I was silent. I wasn't
no.
allowed to talk.
They didn't even reference you existing in there.
No.
Wow. So it wasn't even like, "Hey, who's this guy you brought?" It was just like, "You're invisible."
Yeah,
You
I
know?
was told in the very beginning that he's going to talk to Fred, talk to the girls, and I guess I was just seen as a promoter,
Yeah.
which and a wrestling promoter at that. So I
Oh,
certainly didn't carry any weight there, except for the bulk of my physicality.
yeah. Which you'd think Howard in the '90s that'd have been enough to get a name drop, but
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we have a lot to unpack. Before we get to all this, I do want to reference something present day. If anyone has Netflix, which a lot of you do, the 7-part documentary on OVW called The Wrestlers is one of the most phenomenal shows on wrestling I've ever seen. I binge watched the whole thing. I couldn't get enough of it. It was tremendous. It really gave the viewer a look at how independent wrestling is, and the survival and the struggles and the drama and the backstabbing and everything that goes along with pro wrestling was featured in this show. And Al Snow, who runs OVW, was phenomenal. I mean, this guy and his demeanor and the way he handled his partnerships with money people who really knew nothing about wrestling, the performers themselves, the way he ran the company and runs the company, because it still exists, obviously.
mhm,
It was so good that I reached out to bring him on this program. And I hope that we can do that next week,
that would be great.
because if you haven't seen it, you got to watch it. You just have to watch it. It's the best that, Beyond the Mat was always my favorite documentary on wrestling. But this one surpassed it. Not only was it 7 parts, 7 hours, but the continuing drama and storyline and the characters, it was unlike anything I've ever seen on pro wrestling.
It's awesome. Do you know who put it together?
It was Netflix,
Exclusive?
they produced it, but
Yeah.
they used a company out of England to do the production. And it was put together better than anything I've ever seen on pro wrestling.
That's
So
awesome.
if you have a chance to see it, please do.
I'm excited to watch it. I've seen the trailer probably 11 times because I keep wanting to get it started, and I keep, like, putting it on to see if I get my fiancée hooked. 'Cause once we get
Yeah,
going.
and and there was really one breakout star, in my opinion, in this series, Haley J, who goes by the name of Hollywood Haley J. She's about 22 years old, blonde. She kind of reminded me of today's version of Tammy Fitch.
Yeah.
She, great performer, very realistic, lots of issues behind the scenes.
Mhm.
But she kind of stood out above all the others. And there's a lot of good talent there on the roster. But she has an angle with her mom, which really is almost a shoot in a lot of ways. And they wind up having a death match, ultra violent death match.
Mm.
So anyway, it's I can't talk enough about it. It's great. Check it out, and hopefully next week or the week after we'll have Al Snow on so we can discuss this show in detail with him.
Yeah. Now that I know too, when I watch it, I'll be taking notes.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited.
But what we're going to do today is go back to really was a very tumultuous time. The last couple of shows on NYG. And then I had enough, and I say, sayonara, everybody.
Yeah, this was an interesting one. Your episode November 6th, 242 was just half of it, but even then you can kind of I mean, I was immediately shocked and excited by the opening, which we're going to play first, because I didn't realize you got the chance to weigh in on this legendary story at all, but you were able to. So, you want to get in with the opening?
Let's get into it. Let's not keep everybody in suspense. Let's do it. Good morning, everybody. John Rizzi here with Pro Wrestling This Week. After a 2-week absence, we have returned to the airways to talk about professional wrestling and everything that has been going on inside of it. And it's been a busy couple of weeks. Wow, has it been a busy couple of weeks? The biggest story that everybody in the business seems to be following right now is the altercation that took place over in the UK between Sid Vicious and Arn Anderson. There was a violent confrontation between the two that took place in a hotel room, and that took place in Wales. Sid stabbed Arn 20 times with a scissor. Arn returned the favor. I think he stabbed Sid about 4 times. But really ugly scene there. Both men are now back in the United States, and there's talk that the wrestlers in WCW might boycott the Clash of the Champions, which is a show which is scheduled for 8:05 p.m. this Wednesday night on TBS, unless Sid Vicious is terminated and suspended, fired from WCW. So a real serious situation there. We'll be talking about that here on the program today, and we've given Bruce Jacobs the numbers of both Sid and Arn. I understand that Sid had reached out to one of the reporters in the business, John Clark from Philadelphia, to try to get Arn's number to maybe render an apology. How can you seriously apologize after you stab somebody 20 times? Now, we understand that Too Cold Scorpio made the save, so to speak, saw Sid standing over a Arn Anderson's body with the scissor, and Sid has a story. There's so much going on in the story. It's unbelievable that we've been trying to uncover over the last couple of weeks or so. But, geez, can you believe it? This guy is Sid has been problems in major promotions now for a long time, but they keep hiring him back. Sid was scheduled to win the World Championship from Van Vader at Starrcade in December. Those plans have obviously changed. So we'll focus the show today on what's been going on with Sid. Crazy story. That was like so shocking when it happened.
20 times at this point. That number's been reduced, right? It wasn't 20 times, was it?
Perhaps. I mean, maybe it was a baby scissor. I don't know. But I mean, you're stabbing somebody 20 times. You're lucky that you could breathe. And
yeah.
And then, I guess Arn wrestling it away from him and getting him a few times. A couple of good scissor stabs. It just goes to show you. I mean, at the time, it was a huge, huge story. Everybody was talking about it.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I got to imagine we're not talking, like you said, as giant shears that actually go into the body. It's got to be like little.
Yeah, I guess if he used Brutus Beefcake's scissors, then Arn would have been a goner.
Yeah, no luck at all.
But yeah, very bizarre. story that made all the headlines during that time period, and it was just kind of like the boys, the wrestlers, were kind of like, we don't want to, you better do something with this guy. He's
Yeah,
out of control.
yeah, forget that guy. I also think it's funny that Sid called John Clark to get Arn's number. Like,
Yes,
that's his direct connect.
that was bizarre as well. I mean, shouldn't you have it, or shouldn't you know somebody that can get it other than a wrestling newsletter writer?
Yeah,
Or did,
or maybe
or did no one want to talk to him?
well, you'd also think like whoever's in charge of WCW at that moment, Eric Bischoff, let's say, you'd call Bischoff and say, "Look, this all happened. Can you get us all in a room?" You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
after we get out of the hospital.
Yeah. But he's all like, "Let me call newsletter guy.
Mhm.
He'll help."
Yeah.
Just
He
insane.
always had that, that hair triggered temper, and a very volatile individual in and out of the ring. Of course, he's changed now. He's an older man. He's a granddaddy and all of that. But that was an interesting situation. I mean, the fact that it took place overseas as well, didn't happen here in the States. I mean, what was law enforcement like? I didn't really have that information. I mean, did he get arrested? Did Arn press charges? Did they just kind of patch up the stab wounds and come back home? I mean, there's a lot of questions that today still really need to be answered about it.
You do mention it later, and I think one of our coming up clips too, that they did originally press charges, but both dropped them. Like I
Okay.
said, I think that we're not talking like a knife stabbing. I think it's little pokes that
Yeah.
they could say, "Look, there was one here, one over here." I don't think anything pierced very deeply.
Almost like when you're doing a worked punch.
Yes, worked stabs, scissor stabs, working it. Yeah. And plus you've seen scissors that
Of course.
the tip of 'em like, surgical scissors are have a like, a needle nose, but, like, regular table scissors, they're
Yeah.
curved.
Yeah.
I think he
Yeah.
was
It's
just
hard to penetrate somebody's skin, I mean, unless you're really
yeah.
jamming it in there, because, they're typically not razor sharp on the tip anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm thinking, like, this sounds way worse than it clearly is.
Yeah.
On paper, 20 stabs. You go, "Oh my god." And then, look, he's still gonna wrestle next week, and
Yeah.
then you go, "Okay, wait, there's details here."
Let's make an angle out of it on TV.
Yeah. It was, so nuts. I didn't realize that this was the day that happened. I forgot when it happened. I don't know why it didn't occur to me it was 93.
Yeah.
But as soon as I heard the opening for this, I was me like, "Whoa, John got to cover that?" So,
Yeah,
very
yeah,
exciting.
that was very interesting.
Yeah, after the capsule, you and Donnie break down a little bit more of the details of it. But
Mhm.
after this, you talk about how there's a news article out about the Vince trial because the arraignment had
Yeah,
happened.
the arraignment happened also.
You had it there. The news article was sent to you, but
Yeah.
it was missing a square because your grandmother cut out the picture of you and Billy Graham and put it on the fridge.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was in the Daily News. I believe there was a big story, and one of the photos was me and Billy Graham at the Zaharian trial, actually.
Yeah.
But that was everything led up to that indictment, and we were waiting and waiting and waiting to see when it was going to happen, and it finally did. And then, unfortunately, we go off the air and then come back on the air until after the trial is done and complete.
Yeah. That's what I thought was interesting too is that, I mean, as we get to the next episode, the idea that on your way out, you were still covering this kind of thing,
I know,
it was nuts.
never went away, and now we're still covering stuff today.
Yeah.
I mean, look what happened with the merger and TKO Holdings, and he's now, investigated by the feds on, multiple different things. Will he have to be removed from the board of directors? They signed this freaking huge deal today with NBC Universal.
Yeah.
So SmackDown's going to USA Network, and NBC, the network NBC, is going to do 4 specials
Yeah.
a year with the WWE in prime time.
Yeah. I wonder if we're looking at something more like they did with Tribute to the Troops, just like kind of these one off little shows just
Who
to kind of
knows? I mean, it's not
thing.
going to be until what, 24, 25, because SmackDown goes on to uh, USA Network beginning in October of 2024. That's when that'll happen. And now I'm sure that the discussions with Raw will just kind of escalate and get that done pretty quick. But the money that was involved was more than the last deal they signed with Fox.
Yeah.
It was like a 40% increase in the TV rights.
You want to know what's crazy about that? Stock dropped.
The stock dropped on TKO Holdings, right?
Yeah. When the announcement of the new TV deal being that much larger we're going off of Fox and back to USA, the stock dropped. Where in reverse, when it went from USA to Fox, it spiked. It like doubled.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a bigger deal, but they're like,
Yeah.
I'm out. As far as like stockholders go, that's really weird.
Interesting. I mean, the stock market is a whole different animal anyway, and who knows? I mean, Vince is still, he still plays with fire. He never stops, playing with fire. And with all the, the allegations now and the hush money payments, and he's still embedded there, and the feds are investigating.
Yeah.
On multiple different things. So who knows? We may be covering this guy until we're fucking dead and buried.
I wonder if what their fail-safe is. I mean, it's going to be pure speculation, but if he is indicted, he can't be in the position that he's in, like legally.
No.
They remove it.
They have
So I
to.
wonder they got to have something. Yeah.
Is Triple H the backup? Would Stephanie come back at that point? Or do they even need him? Because now it's part of Endeavor.
Yeah. That's my point. I think it's fascinating.
And with all the layoffs and employees that got cut and all the talent cuts that were announced today, nothing major. Some of these guys, you wondered, they're still on the roster, the ones that were cut?
Yeah, I'm not trying to be insensitive about it, but the majority of people gone hadn't really been on TV in the last year plus.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, oh, okay. And I mean, you always want them to do well and all that, but some of them had
There are no
incredible potential.
A-level talent let go, at least as of this point.
Yeah, there was a lot of potential cut. I would say that a lot of people who could have become something, but that is what it is.
Yeah, maybe they'll go over to Tony Khan. He signs everybody with a pulse.
I happen to know there's been a number of ex-WWE guys who thought that was going to be the case, and then he showed no interest. So you never know.
Mm-hmm. Never know.
Everyone's got their favorites, right?
The wrestling business. That's why I enjoy covering what we did years ago.
Yeah.
But it seems like, what's old is new again.
Exactly. It's wild. It's funny. I was even saying recently that all the chatter on the old X has been so lame to me and just repetitive and nothing new. And then I logged on today and I was like, oh, back in business.
We got some news.
We got one.
Crazy.
But Don Laible joins you on the show. This isn't the capsule. This is before the capsule. Don Laible, for the first time, got kind of a hair up his ass on this one. He's not happy. And I was
Donnie
like,
with a hair up his ass. That's very rare.
Yeah. So let's take a look at this.
And if you're wondering why we haven't brought up Weekend of Champions convention yet, it's because it's an event I'd certainly like to forget. Everybody seemed to have had a good time, but it was a nightmare for me personally. Let's get on the phone with Donny Laible. Don, are you there from upstate New York near Cooperstown?
Yes, I am, and we're expecting some more snow this weekend here.
Oh, yeah?
As I told you earlier, last weekend we had 8 inches come down on Saturday and Sunday.
It sounds like it's raining in the background over your head here.
It could be.
A little static.
Yes, lots on my mind this week. Of course, some I will not be able to share because I'd only get myself in trouble. But
what's that?
A lot of little tidbits to share. I tell you, I was, and as you know this, I was very upset. I thought they certainly had you got a short end of the deal in the Pro Wrestling Torch last week. I think it was...
Oh, the Sabu table breaking incident.
For somebody that prides themselves in calling themselves a journalist, and that's something that you have to earn, not automatically slap a name tag on yourself and say, I'm a journalist. Not once did I see anywhere in that issue or before that any mention on the convention itself. And this is supposed to be reporting objectively on something that happens. It's a wrestling event. Was there any mention of what wrestlers were there, What did fans' reactions think of meeting some of the wrestlers? What was being sold there? What were anything about the question and answer thing? Nothing about Pena being there, Ron Scholar. Nothing about Terry Funk talking there. Nothing about the Howard Stern show with Medusa being there. Hey, there was nothing, but it's just let's get some dirt, and that's basically what it was. And even this week's the rebuttal, basically. It's still saying, even though he has proof of what you were saying, your side of it, it's still like, well, who's really telling the truth? And I think that's such yellow journalism, and it's something of a cheap shot to you. And I'm saying that not only because I'm a good friend of yours, but looking at the whole thing objectively. There's not one mention of the convention other than some tables being broken and allegedly who's supposed to pay for what.
Well, we investigated the third table that was broken, and lo and behold, we have discovered the culprit. And Bruce, I think you were an eyewitness to this. It was the original Sheik breaking a table out in the lobby. It was not Sabu. Sabu, actually, so I should charge the Sheik the $138.90 for that third table.
I want him deposition, John. Now.
Matter of fact, he's coming into town next week. A summit is going to be taking place. Himself and Kevin Sullivan and yours truly are getting together in New Jersey with my agent for overseas tours, and the Sheik wants to help us out and bring us to Greece and a few other countries.
The Sheik breaking tables.
Yeah, what a surprise.
Donnie was fed up with those newsletters giving you grief.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of for me. I got heat for it, but when Sabu broke the table the night of the live show, which was the Friday night, and then I get a bill for that from the hotel. I guess there were 3 tables in total, counting the one the Sheik broke, and so I charged them for it. Should I have? Probably not. Maybe it was a cost of doing business, but I did allow Sabu to take the table and and break it up into pieces, sign it, and sell it to fans.
Yeah.
So that's what he did.
That's awesome.
He's sure he probably got his $138 back that I
sure.
deducted from his payday. But looking at it now, 30 years later, it was probably a little not right for me to do. I mean, that was part of doing business, but I was this was totally self-funded. It wasn't a moneymaker, and it was kind of like I was in a bad state of mind that convention. It was not good. Fans had a good time.
Yeah, that's one of the few things you bring up about this was that tables were broken and it charged you and that you just didn't have a good time. You do mention you didn't get to see any of the wrestling.
I didn't see the show, maybe a couple of seconds here and there. I did a little angle with Tommy Fitch and Chris Candido in the ring during one of the matches. But for the most part, I was running around and I didn't really get to see the show. I mean, I was up also the night before for the Howard Stern show, didn't sleep all night. And I was physically and mentally exhausted.
Do you remember anything being particularly chaotic outside of some tables breaking in the lobby?
Just not enough fans.
Okay.
And everybody pulling at you, and just doing it on my own with Donnie's help and Bruce's help and my family who always showed up and volunteers.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like, all right, this is something that I really don't want to do again.
So it was just a bunch of little nitpicky things. It was just
a lot of it.
Everything.
Yeah.
At once. Okay.
A lot of it, and you got Jake there. And it's like, it was just kind of like, I was just over it.
Yeah.
I was over it at that point. I was over it. And especially, you always know, even though the convention's 2 days, you always know by like noon or, mid-afternoon, whether it's going to be a bust or not.
Yeah.
And this was the lightest attended convention ever. And I wasn't on radio. I was on NYG, which was, a 1,000-watt little station that the reach wasn't there. So it wasn't like I had in the old days with EVD and with GBB, where, the reach of the station was much, much larger. And even though the little newspaper ads that I could afford and took out, these little tiny little ads in some of the newspapers and some of the radio advertising, which I probably misspent, advertising, for Howard Stern on the Howard Stern show and Mike and the Mad Dog. Those were not dollars well spent. I should have pumped more into television advertising for that.
That or actually wonder, because even in the Stern show, he mentioned that advertising on his channel was like 2,500 or 5,000.
2,500. Yeah,
Yeah.
2,500. Yeah.
Uh, how much was it a week at EBD?
1,050.
Yeah. So maybe if you had spent the same money to get 4 weeks on,
Didn't make good business decisions, man.
I mean, it's also, that's also speculative. It's just that just happened to be an audience that was kind of looking for you anyways, and Howard's audience maybe was not looking for you. It's just hard to say.
Yeah, I don't think the Howard Stern fan, at least the vast majority of them, gave a hoot about a wrestling convention.
Yeah. You just hope with that large reach, though, that you'd have enough
Yes.
information trickle out.
Yeah.
I mean?
And even Mike and the Mad Dog, I mean, they did the live reads and they bantered back and forth about it. But even the regular sports audience was really not the pro wrestling audience in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
This was a hardcore wrestling. And here's the thing. It wasn't even mainstream crossover, big names. It was a hardcore fan stream.
Yeah.
It was the Kevin Sullivans, the Terry Funks, these were the Sheik, the original Sheik, So these were performers and these were attractions and that, the casual fan wouldn't even probably want to go to. It wasn't a Ric Flair, wasn't Sting, wasn't Bruno wasn't there. It was like it just didn't have. I was promoting it more of a wrestling promoter, like an IWAS/AAA promoter, than I was as kind of a pop culture wrestling convention like I did in the past.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Theme. I tried to do a father-son theme that didn't come together the way I wanted it to, but it wasn't like the previous three where there was an angle, there was a theme. It was just kind of like I'm doing a live show, I'm promoting IWAS and the performers that worked for me on the tours. I was promoting AAA, who didn't even have TV, in the States. So it was just it was a mistake.
I mean, in defense of you, you'd imagine if like if I had a friend who was listening to Howard and they said a wrestling convention was coming to town, my friend would tell me, "Hey, I heard this wrestling convention is coming to town. You might want to look into it," right?
Yeah.
But it didn't seem like that must have happened. It's just kind of weird.
No, we didn't have the turnout. It just wasn't there. And I knew by Saturday afternoon that it was just like I was done.
And so you probably had a good gut feeling that you just weren't going to be doing this again anyways.
Yes.
So,
although, beginning with next week's show, we go forward 9 months, Back to the Future.
Yeah.
We go 9 months, and then I start talking about doing a 1-day deal on Long Island, so which never happened, I don't think. A lot of this stuff for me now was kind of like suppressed memory.
Yeah.
30 years ago, and there's a lot of stuff I don't want to remember. And when I hear this stuff, and especially when I was uploading some of the new stuff today, I'm like, did that ever happen? Did I ever do that? Did I ever put that show on? So I was, so a lot of this stuff, that's why it's so fascinating every week to be able to relive it. It's like you're going back 30 years, and a lot of this stuff I chose to forget or didn't want to relive.
And when you did so many, you promoted so many things, and so many of them were successful and fun, that the ones that weren't don't stick out in your mind as much as the ones that you had a good time.
No.
You know what I mean? Like the first weekend of Champions, you remember like every moment of, because it was everything. You got all those.
Yeah. And the second one with Flair and all the other champions there, and then even the third one with with the Jushin Liger, Zbyszko San Martino reunion, all the other legends that were there, and so this one was just kind of like I'm doing it to try to make some money, and it didn't pan out, and I was done, and I was fed up anyway with the business at that time. I was just kind of done.
Yeah. Don says that Bob Uri's going to the Canary Islands, which is neat, and
That's
then
nice.
he was so excited to see you in the Newsday article. And he wants going on about that for a minute.
Uh-huh.
But I thought that was cool. He was like, and there's my friend, But here's the capsule. And then after the capsule, you and Donnie get a little bit more into the weeds about Sid. After that, I don't have the bit where you say it, but you guys were trying to get Sid and or Arn on the phone.
This shows you the level of insanity I was at that point.
Yeah.
Like they would
Call
really
him.
come on. Either one of them would really come on and talk about it.
Well, imagine if you try to get them on together. All right, guys, hash it out.
Yeah.
Jeez. Here's the capsule.
Go right ahead, Don.
All righty, topping news, as we said this week, a brawl involving Sid Vicious and Arn Anderson while on tour in England. Now, these are the details that have been publicly stated since the October 26th incident. Apparently, on the bus ride from Cardiff to London, that's in England, Sid and Arn had words on who was more valuable to the company, Ric Flair and Arn, or Sid. And once reaching their hotel rooms, reports allegedly have Sid charging through Arn's door with a part of a chair, not a table. Joined in melee, a pair of scissors got involved, and when the incident was broken up, both wrestlers were hospitalized. Anderson, the recipient of 20 stab wounds, and Big Sid got 4. Now, both men pressed charges against each other, of which were dropped later. Now, it appears that Sid is gone from WCW and won't be in Starrcade's main event. Anderson, well, he's recuperating at his home in Charlotte, North Carolina. Also, a couple tidbits to pass along. At last Saturday's card in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, Jimmy Cornette lost in a match to his first ever protege, sensational Sherry Martel. And Smoky Mountain Wrestling has begun having its program aired on Channel America on Wednesday evenings at 11 p.m. That's Eastern Time. Today, the WWF is in Rochester, New York, and WCW remains on its European tour in Germany. Now, this week in pro wrestling, November 1976, that's 17 years ago, in Detroit, Michigan, it was Carlos Rocha. Remember him in the WWF?
Oh, yeah.
He defeated Reginald Love. It was in six-man tag that Superstar Billy Graham, Don Fargo, and Lord Alfred Hayes. They came out on the winning end of Bob Backlund, Wilbur Snyder, and Pat O'Connor in St. Louis. And it was in St. Joe, Missouri, that Ricky Gibson beat Bob, I'm not Sarge yet, Slaughter. Capsule time, 10:14.
Okay, Don, and of course that story with Sid, it's just an unbelievable story. When I first heard it, when word got around, it was something that it was hard to comprehend. Of course, it's such a serious incident when you stab somebody 20 times. Normally in a fight, let's say even if there's a gang fight or something, there's usually a stab. You stab a guy once or twice, but if you stab somebody 20 times, that shows a little bit of
Bates Motel material.
It's pretty much so, and we're going to attempt to contact some of the parties involved in this thing today. Whether we have any success in doing so remains to be seen. I'd give it 100 to 1 shot that one of these guys will come on the air with us. But we're going to try nonetheless to get somebody on the air. We're also going to attempt to contact John Clark today. John had received a call or talked to Sid, and Sid was trying to get Arn's number apparently to apologize. That's a story we've heard. But the other thing is that all the wrestlers in WCW, or at least the vast majority of the wrestlers, are attempting to band together and join forces. And if Sid is not officially terminated from the company, they all plan on boycotting the Clash of the Champions live telecast next Wednesday.
Now, what do you think the odds are of Sid resurfacing with WCW or even back with the WWF?
Well, I think it would be a big mistake on anyone's part at this point to get involved with Sid if he is indeed terminated. I think it has to come down to his termination from WCW, and I don't think that the WWF would go near him now, or any major or minor federation. Certainly he has marquee value, although he has not sold out arenas, who has recently, but Sid does have marquee value. But after this incident, I can't see anyone hiring him unless the guy, well, I'll talk to him about it if he comes on the air, unless he gets some type of help for himself,
That's pretty dangerous stuff when, God forbid, he could have taken an eye out or even...
Not that he didn't try, maybe.
This is true. But that's really incredible.
But Too Cold Scorpio, now the story I heard yesterday was that Sid was standing over Arn, and Too Cold Scorpio had interceded that passed by the hotel room or whatever, and Sid just saw Scorpio and just like ran away. Sid is saying that he like blacked out. He don't remember the incident. We're going to try to clear all as much as we can up as possible regarding this situation, and see where we can get to the bottom of here today.
Certainly is a good forum, because I know if I was involved in something, I would want to get the word out and clear it up, and because all the speculation and newsletters writing about things, different talk in the dressing rooms, and it should come from the horse's mouth.
Yeah,
20 times.
Yeah, crazy. I mean, and he was in the middle of this big push. They had put the title on him. I mean, these were shows that Bischoff had taped for air, like, and over the next several weeks, and they had to revise everything. So Flair got the title back. Arn had gotten suspended. Sid got fired.
It's insane. I was happy that you got to cover it for you, because I knew your last show was coming up any second, and then I heard this, and I was like, he got a big one in right at the end.
Got a big one in at the end. Yeah. Although, based on our show numbers, show 242, there's no 243 or 244, so we'll jump to 245 when so I mean there were still 2 weeks that we didn't even have. It's crazy. It was just kind of the mindset I was in at the time. Just like didn't give a shit.
Yeah, and you can tell because let's see, even here you talk about you trying to get Sid and Arn on. You wanted to thank Donny publicly about helping out the World Weekend of Champions, and he was just kept saying it's not helping, it's just I'm having fun. You know what I mean? Like he was just
and that's the way he always felt.
Yeah. You did mention it had to be structured differently, but something that you'd noticed was that while you were there, a lot of people asked you about WEVD, and you said it's starting to make you think about getting back on EVD, and maybe you should give it an effort, because you said you'd been kind of depressed lately, and hearing people saying they wanted you back over there kind of had you think maybe that's the ticket. You know what I mean? Maybe that's the thing.
Yeah, I had the audience for sure, and then when you disappear off that big station and you go into a little tiny house to record and to do a show where hardly anyone can hear you, it takes everything away.
Yeah.
And as we continue on with the journey, beginning with next week when I return to WGBB, I mean, the audience is there. I mean, and it's 2 hours, and it's an hour of phone calls, and people from all over calling in, and happy that I'm back after 9 months. So we'll get into that next week. But that audience was there. But I could have and should have. Donnie's calling right now. Should we put him on for a second?
Yes.
Hold on. Donnie, are you there?
Yes.
We're on the air. We're on the air right now.
I'll call you back.
Hey, no. Stay for a second. Stay for a second. Can you stay for 1 second?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
We're just going over 1993 and the convention, and Sid and Arn with the stabbing incident, and we were just listening to you because we had just finished talking about the 93 convention and how you were defending me as you always did, and I just wanted to, and like you called while we were taping again. So hey, listen, it's serendipitous, and I always certainly appreciate you helping me and being by my side in that 93 convention. You have any memories of it?
Of course I do. I wish it's in my mind. It's still going on. I do. Just the idea of all the people that you had there, all the fans that came and filled up the room, people buying and selling, getting autographs. My gosh, people today do those things. They have no clue to where it all started from, and on such a level. I remember, like when Ric Flair, for instance, I remember paying him. You gave me the money to pay him in cash, and just put it in his hands.
That was 91. This was 93 when I got panned for charging Sabu for breaking a table.
They were just so wonderful. Can I tell a quick Sid story since you mentioned Sid?
Yeah, we were just talking about the stabbing. So go ahead, tell us a Sid story.
Well,
That'd be great.
Let me tell you my Sid story. This was as I was starting to leave taking a hiatus from wrestling because of my experiences with ECW. We're to show, they had a card in Worcester and then the next night in Boston. The first night, it was a Friday night, we're in Worcester at the Palladium, right downtown Worcester, full crowd, the whole thing. And Sid was there. And Sid was a fabulous person to talk to. So I'm standing in the dressing room talking to Sid, minding my own business. And Tommy Rich walks by. And out of nowhere, he punched me in the chest. And I lost my breath for a moment. And then I started getting scared and nervous. But what the heck was that for? Sid just looked at him. And he just, as Tommy's walking away, he's pointing his finger at me saying, and that's for not telling your friends where the party was last night or something, because they got in the day before. And I had no idea what he was talking about. So, of course, I walked away, and Sid just shook his head at Tommy and walked away. And so I told my friends at night, the promoters, I said, these guys are really nuts here. He just punched me in the chest for not telling you about a party, which I totally forgot about and wouldn't think about, because when it was with ECW, I really kept the distance, because these guys were nuts. It was always, whether it's a contest or who's taking the most somas or who's taking the most somas and taking something else with it. And it's just insane. So the next night, I'm in my room, the hotel room. And by the way, ECW was kicked out of 3 hotels in Boston. And we're at this hotel in Malden, Mass. So they're all out at a party or something. And I said, I'm not going out with that, especially with Tommy Rich there and these other people drinking and doing everything else. And I stayed in my room, not bothering anybody. I'm getting ready so I could get up at 5 a.m. to get to the bus station in downtown Boston and go home. Well, the phone rings. And mind you, I probably told you this story before, but maybe the listeners didn't. But this is how insane the wrestling business became from what I started from. I'm sitting in a room. Now think about this. This is a week before Christmas. It's snowing. It's got to be at least midnight, okay? It's cold, the whole thing. And the phone rings, and I hear somebody say, I want to talk to Paul. And I said, Paul's not here, and I hung up. Now, I'm thinking the promoter, Paul Richard. Obviously, later I find out somebody says they're calling for Paul Heyman. Well, the phone rings again. Immediately says, I want to talk to fucking Paul. And I said, look, there's no Paul here. Cling, I hang up the phone. Now, little did I know, on the right side of our hotel room, that's where the call was being generated from. In that room was Rod Price. There was, oh my gosh, with the Italians, a really real big Sally. Was that it? Real big guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Balls Mahoney and somebody else in there. So after the second call, I thought I was in a Bugs Bunny cartoon. There's somebody pounding on my door, pounding, and I see it coming off by the hinges. That's how hard they're hitting it. And I think, I'm going to die. And at that moment, I said, if I get out of this alive, I'm running the hell away from this business forever. These people are crazy. Well, I figured I'm going to make a run for it. So mind you, I have on a pair of shorts, and it's snowing out. I throw on my jacket, and I figure, okay, who's ever there, I'm going to get past them somehow, and I'm just going to run. So I run away. I try to run away. It's Balls Mahoney. And Balls is just messed up. He's throwing up. He's it's just a total mess. Maybe other things he's been doing. It's just a mess. So Balls grabs me by the collar on my jacket, and I know I'm going to die. I'm going to die right now. Well, he said, where's Paul? I said, there's no Paul here, and Paul Heyman's not here. And anyway, long story short, then he starts getting mad, and at the whole time, he's intermittently just vomiting all over the place. So only could happen with ECW and with wrestling. It so happened that hotel, the motel that we were staying at, only had one channel working on our televisions. And that channel was a porno channel. Go figure, right? Only in wrestling it happened. So Balls is angry that we only have one channel and it's porn. So he has me by the collar. I cannot get loose, and I think I'm going to die. And he was a big guy, right? So he takes me across the parking lot in the snow, and we go into the office. And don't you know, the guy working in the hotel, in the motel is, should be called Pops because he looks about 80 years old, behind the plexiglass. And Balls is in the lobby complaining that we only have one TV and it's porn. And in the meantime, he's throwing up in the lobby. And I cannot get away. And I'm going, this is nuts. I'm going to die. So by some miracle, we get out of the place. And I think, okay, I'm going to run for it. I can't. He's hungry and he wants a roast beef. Now, people that have been to New England know of the I think it's called Brian's Roast Beef, or it's a chain up there. And it's across Route 1, which is where our motel was located. So Balls tells me he wants to eat. So I think, okay, I'll get away now. So I go run across the parking lot, down an embankment, across Route 1, in the snow, in my shorts, into Brian's Roast Beef. And Balls says to me, I don't want cheese. Well, I had enough money on me to buy a roast beef sandwich, and they put cheese on it. So I run across Route 1, up the embankment, through the parking lot, and it's snowing. And I figure I'm just going to throw it at him and then lock my door, and hopefully it'll stay locked. No. So I get there, Balls, I give him the hamburger, the roast beef, and he grabs me by the jacket again. And he goes, this is bullshit, it's got cheese. And I got loose. I got back in the room. I locked the door up. And by some miracle, he was okay. And I could hear the guys in the next room as I closed my door. They were all laughing, thinking it's funny, which it wasn't. And so I stayed in the room. My friends came back in the room about 3:00 in the morning. I had them drive me to the bus station in Boston. And hopefully I thought I would see Tony Atlas, because I normally did when he was working shows. I did not. I stayed at the bus station at 3:00 or so on. And I said, I'm never coming back again. And if this is what the business is, I'm finished with it. And ECW, I would never go to another show because they were just crazy people. And mind you, what happened earlier in the day, the Pit Bulls was staying in there. And I guess they didn't have any money or something for their hotel room. And so the plan was, we're going to toss the mattress around, make the place look like it's been robbed. Tell the hotel people, say we were robbed, and then they would wouldn't have to pay for their room. And the whole time they would do it, that Rick Rude was looking out the window to make sure it's the lookout guy. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And that, from that time on, starting with my conversation with Sid, I said, I'm done. I ran away from it. And I just said, you know what? Either the business changed or I just didn't want to change. And let me just think of Chief J Strongbow and Spiros Arion and be a happy man. So that's what I did.
There you go. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us, Donnie.
I have one question for Donnie.
Marsh has a question for you.
Well, just let me say this. The next day when I left and I got home, I had a call from Balls, and he apologized. And I was told that Paul Lee told him to call me and apologize.
Oh, wow. Paul liked you.
Yeah. Well, Paul did.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's your question, Marsh?
So we're going to get into it in a little bit. The next show that we're covering is John's last show. And he mentions right after the capsule that he had only told you and Bruce right before you guys went on the air. Do you remember the moment that he told you that before he made the announcement?
I don't, but I'm sure I was sad, and like all good things have to come to an end sooner or later, whether we want to or not. And nothing lasts forever. And well,
Donnie, then we come back 8 months later, and you're still there with me. So as you are today, as you always have been all my life, and your friendship is valued and treasured. And we are joined at the hip for life, my friend.
That's it. You got it.
All right, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
All righty.
Take care. There he goes. What a nightmare story that was.
Yeah, and it started pretty ominously. Was it Tommy Rich or Sid who punched him? It was Sid who punched him.
It was Tommy. It was Tommy Rich who punched him. Yeah, and Sid was there.
Just pointing his finger out. Jeez. Well, yeah, that'll definitely make you not want to stop being backstage,
Yeah. Well, or at the hotel.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where all the shenanigans took place.
That had to feel pretty jarring, too, just from the reality that, we're talking, Donny knew everybody. Donny was a real insider.
Yeah.
He had always been treated with so much respect by everybody. And then for that, it's kind of like,
until that era at ECW, when everything and anything goes and the drugs were flowing and there was no money. And you're talking about a group of performers who put their lives on the line, but they were all messed up.
Yeah. Yeah, being an insider didn't sound so fun all of a sudden.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
It was extreme.
Yep.
Well, anyway, that was kind of interesting. That's the second time that's happened with us, right? Especially when we're talking about Donny, and all of a sudden the phone rings, and there he is.
I like surprise Donny. Let's see. As we keep moving through, though, you got a hold of Sid. He was not happy that you got a hold of him. And he does not want to come on the show. And then I believe when you tried to call back, it went straight to a fax line.
Yeah.
So I imagine he unplugged his wall phone and plugged
it into
the fax.
Yeah. He never liked me anyway.
Yeah, you said that.
Oh, yeah.
You talk about Clash of Champions for a minute about what it's going to be. It's going to have Flair and Vader, Rick Rude versus Hawk for the NWA, the defunct NWA title, and Mean Gene's making his debut on WCW. And then you talk about AAA and IWC partnership, and Eric Bischoff reaching out to Antonio Pena. And this is a short little clip, but you're getting a little agitated.
Yeah,
I tell you, there's been a lot of heat in WCW. Regarding something that saddens me in a way, the AAA IWC partnership. IWC, of course, is a group that we formed here in the States, and the AAA Antonio Pena, that great Mexican organization, we're in partnership here in the States. We got our shows next weekend in California, but WCW's Eric Bischoff has faxed Antonio Pena a proposal. He wanted to do business with the AAA. TBS was offering, I believe, their own television show and talent exchange. But Mr. Pena turned that down. It was an interesting scenario via these WCW knowing that we had a partnership with them but still trying to cut us out of the picture. And it just goes to show you that snakes are slithering around everywhere you look in the professional wrestling business. It's an interesting scenario.
So did you feel like that because you were working with AAA that Bischoff should have asked you about getting a hold of them?
He should have asked either myself or Ron Skoler for sure.
Yeah.
And he knew
about utilizing them?
He knew where to find. I mean, eventually a deal was struck, and there was a pay-per-view, as everybody knows.
Yeah.
And that was in '94. So this was just the first overture, but the way he handled it, going right to Pena, maybe not have been the most ethical thing.
He had to have known you guys were involved. He didn't ask who was in charge.
Let's call Eric right now and ask him.
Yeah. Well, maybe is he calling? Yeah.
Eric.
Yeah. Are you there?
No, but it was just kind of, once we had the success that we did,
yeah,
everyone took notice of it.
Yeah. And I guess he could have asked who's booking it and not who's owning it, right? Because Pena was the owner, right?
Pena was the owner, yeah.
Yeah. So he went straight to who owns it and not who books or manages or any of
partners, that. Or is actually the United States partner with AAA.
Huh. Yeah. Well, you start getting frustrated with him. You mentioned that you heard good things about the matches at Weekend of Champions, but you didn't get to see any of them. And then this is the end of that episode. This is right before you do the last caller. Someone walks in. This is
the season finale of The Sopranos, right? This one?
Yes. Okay. This was the one.
We're going to go to Brooklyn for our first phone call today and go to Eric. Eric, you are there.
Hello, John.
Yes, Eric, how are you?
I'd like to congratulate you for you got more money than an average WCW house show. from the card you threw from 2 weeks ago, and you drew more fans than the average WCW house show last month.
Well, you were at the show, weren't you, Eric?
Yep.
Okay, what did you think of the quality of the card? And I know it was a very low ceiling in the ballroom of the Ramada Hotel.
I thought the local wrestlers were horrible, to be honest.
Did you?
Especially Sonny Blaze.
You didn't enjoy Sonny's performance, huh?
During the card, I told you Sonny Blaze was the worst work I saw.
No, that's that's certainly your opinion.
Anyway, during the convention, I got a chance to talk to Ron Scola.
Yeah.
This guy knows what the hell he's doing in wrestling, unlike WCW does. He's planning to throw a card, I heard, in New York, he was telling me.
Yeah, we're coming to New York in January.
Oh, that's good, but to be honest, I think this is not like big Lucha area.
Well, see what our game plan is, Eric, for marketing this particular event will be marketing it to the Latino population. We're not actually going to market it to the American wrestling fans, unless they're fans that listen to this particular program. And there's talk about IWC sponsoring a WEVD show for like 6 weeks out going into that garden show. So we're not actually marketing it to American wrestling fans. The same thing as we're doing out in California. There's not one commercial out in Los Angeles that is geared towards the American fan, because the American fan is not in tune, unless you're a hardcore wrestling fan, to the Lucha style of wrestling.
Also, are you going to release the IWAS video from a Friday night show you had?
Yeah, I still got to look at it, and we certainly want to release that. And we also have our footage finally from over in the Philippine Islands, so we'll be putting out a best of IWAS 1993 overseas tour, and we also filmed some stuff in Dallas, so we're going to put together a compilation tape for hopefully by Christmas.
Because I was going to buy the IWAS videos and stuff at the convention, but fortunately it wasn't on.
Yeah, all these tapes, I don't know where the hell they are. I have the IWAS stuff from Southeast Asia, but I don't have any of the other tapes.
Yeah, I thought you said there wasn't a taping of the Dallas one. I thought you got rid of it.
You're right.
Yeah.
Maybe there was some handheld. Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was talking out of my ass. Who the fuck knows?
But I thought this guy was funny because he sounds like what everyone says didn't exist, right? So when you're on Twitter and stuff, and the IWC is just, this sucks compared to that, and look at this one, he's doing everything right. These guys are doing nothing right, and this is the worst guy ever. They were around forever. This is him.
Yeah, this is the same guy that's out there today. And it's crazy because he's talking about how I outdrew WCW and had a bigger house. How would he know, first of all, I had that? And that ballroom, what do we have in that ballroom? Maybe we had 500 people? Maybe. It was a hotel ballroom.
Yeah.
With very limited capacity.
Yeah.
It was filled because it didn't take much to fill it.
Yeah. It's just another know-it-all fan who's got all the right answers.
Who are around in the thousands and millions on social media today.
Yeah. And it's the same tribalism then too. And it's not to I'm not trying to crap on anything specifically.
No.
It was just oh, look at this type of voice has always been prominent. It's always been out there.
Yes.
It just, you'd swear he was around today just being Vince McMahon doesn't know what he's doing. This Tony Khan guy, he's got it all figured out. And you kind of go, there's probably more of a balance. Same guy's doing it here. Sonny Blaze is the most terrible worker he's ever seen. No, he's not.
No, he's not.
He's just not. Sure, he wasn't Flair, but he was not the worst worker you've ever
seen. He was a seasoned enhancement guy.
Yeah, he was fine.
He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing in the ring.
He knew how to do what he did. Right. Yeah. So I just was so enamored by this perfect example. And I was like, they're always there. Because I love it when I see people tweet out things like, so good there was no internet back in the day. Oh, you would never seen this. Oh, this only happened when Twitter came around. I was like, no. The people who had platforms, those other people found them. Your platform became a place where people called to say the same things that people tweet now. Is cool. Just neat. Big shout out to Sonny Blaze.
Yes.
That brings us to your last show for quite some time. It is right after Thanksgiving. You said that you hope everyone had a pleasant one, that the arraignment of Vince McMahon took place. And then right before you get Donny Laible on, you said that you're going to be making a major announcement right after the capsule. And then you briefly mentioned that McMahon pleaded not guilty, but you're going to be talking about that in a bit. Here's the capsule with Donny. And I would say listening to this after hearing the announcement and then going back, I think you can hear it in his voice. And I think that there's a pause at the end before he goes out where he's almost like he wants to say something more, but decides not to. You haven't made the announcement. You know what I mean? Like, listen to his tone here.
I will.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Well, Vince McMahon and Titan Sports were arraigned this past Tuesday in Brooklyn Federal Court. McMahon pled not guilty on an array of charges involving illegal use of steroids, including conspiracy to distribute them and possession. He was released on $250,000 bond, and a May 2nd trial date has been set. At the arraignment, McMahon refused to answer any questions from the media. This past Wednesday, the World Wrestling Federation presented their 7th annual Survivor Series pay-per-view from the Boston Garden. The two major angles stressed on the show were Owen Hart's heel turn on his brother Bret and Macho Man Randy Savage's, who substituted for Curt Hennig, his feud with Crush. The lone title change on the card saw Jim Cornette's Heavenly Bodies once again reclaim the Smoky Mountain Wrestling tag team belts from the Rock and Roll Express. With last Saturday's Battle Bro pay-per-view from Pensacola, Florida over with, World Championship Wrestling's next pay show is Starrcade, set for next month. Then they'll be going to Albany, Georgia on February 20th for Super Brawl. Now, the top two matches penciled in so far are first in six-man tag action, the trio of Dustin Rhodes, Sting, and Brian Pillman. They will oppose Steve Austin, Rick Rude, and Paul Orndorff. Plus, in a Thunderdome cage, it will be Ric Flair and Big Van Vader going at one another on the Super Brawl lineup. Now, during WCW's TV tapings earlier this month in Orlando, Florida, for the next dozen weeks of the worldwide syndication show, two tag teams started working together at the tapes. Cactus Jack and Max Payne were one, and the other Paul Orndorff and Paul Roma. Also in matches to be shown after Starrcade, Vader was introduced as the former WCW champion. Co-owner of the United States Wrestling Association, Jerry Jarrett, continues to shop around his share of the promotion. Published reports have Jarrett offering to sell to an Indianapolis magazine photographer, Jeff Cohen, who turned him down. Now, Jerry Lawler is Jarrett's partner. Presently, Jarrett is living in Connecticut working for the WWF, and his eldest son, Jeff, will be starting up full-time with the Federation shortly. Next Sunday, December 5th, in Wayne, New Jersey, at the Holiday Inn, Tommy Fierro will be presenting his first All-Star Wrestling convention between noon and 6 p.m. Among those scheduled to appear are Tito Santana, Demolition Axe, and Ivan Koloff. Checking out the match schedules for today with the major U.S. promotions, WCW is in Florida. The USWA runs in Nashville, Tennessee at the Sports Arena. Smoky Mountain continues with their Thanksgiving Thunder Tour at the Central High School in Barberville, Kentucky. And in Madison Square Garden, the WWF is in town. Now, this week, the Federation will be holding 3 days of TV shootings. On Monday in White Plains, Tuesday the cameras roll in Springfield, Mass., and on Wednesday the WWF comes to Utica, New York. Newly hired TV announcer Joe Fowler has become newly fired TV announcer. He was to be the company's answer to the loss of Gene Okerlund. Well, they let him go, and reports have it that Stan Lane will replace Joe Fowler as the face-to-face segments. To the scrapbook files we go. On this date in wrestling history 8 years ago, November 27th, 1985, in Miami, both the WWF and National Wrestling Alliance ran shows. On the NWA bill, Superstar Billy Graham won by DQ over Abdullah the Butcher. And in WWF action, the team of Roddy Piper and Bob Orton defeated Mike Rotundo and Paul Orndorff. Also on this day, an independent card took place in Fairmont, West Virginia. In the main event, David Schultz and the Mighty Igor went to a double countout. Also, would like to pass along the passing of a wrestling star from the 70s to the 80s, and maybe before that, especially in the Central States area. Rufus R. Jones, known as Freight Train, well, he passed away a couple weeks ago at age 60 of a heart attack, and he was still living in the Central States area. Also, we want to let you know to add Atsushi Onita, the FMW star in Japan, to those among the Japanese contingency being invited by the Federation to their January Royal Rumble. Tenryu and Kabuki of War have also been offered to take part in the event. One other final note, Survivor Series, the Knights were Greg Valentine, Jeff Gaylord, and Steve Lombardi. Now, Lombardi worked the opening dark match with one of the Smoking Guns. And interesting enough, from people that were at the Survivor Series, they were telling me that you were able to upgrade your tickets that evidently they either went unclaimed or unsold, so there were some seats there. For the Pro Wrestling This Week, I'm Donny Laible reporting. Capsule time, 10:10.
He got kind of shaky at the end, and I feel like that he was trying to...
Yeah, he was holding it together a little bit.
Yeah. I almost wonder if he was going to be like for the final time or whatever, like if he was,
Yeah.
you know...
But the announcement wasn't made yet.
Exactly. So he was like, no. You know. Jerry Jarrett looking to sell his portion, I thought was big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. And it occurred to me while listening to it too, as they're mentioning some of the stuff, like you left right before the debut of Alundra Blaze as well. That was like a month later. You were off air.
Yep.
A
lot of stuff happened while I wasn't there.
Yeah. Jeff Jarrett showing up in WWF. A lot of...
Maybe we should do kind of a synopsis of what went down
during the 9 months.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. So you got your work cut out for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll start looking through who made what, when.
I mean, you know, there doesn't have to be a lot, but just kind of main 5 or 6 stories. McMahon's trial was certainly one of them.
Yeah, well, I'm also thinking people who were associated with you. You even said here that you asked him, "Are you sure that was Greg Valentine under the hood at Survivor Series?"
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Yep, absolutely." And you said, "That's weird because I just asked Greg and Medusa if they were going to be at Survivor Series, and they said no, he was going to be in like Puerto Rico." And he goes, "They worked me. I got worked." So, yeah,
never spill the beans. Never be transparent.
No way.
Just work you. That's all they do.
Yeah. But there was a lot of things that was just about to happen the next month with people who you were involved with in one way or the other. The other name came up, Max Payne.
Yeah.
Cactus Jack and Max Payne. Max Payne he floats around from time to time. People post it because he was in WWF for a short period of time with the WWF logo guitar. But I don't know of anything else that he really did.
Oh, what a business.
Yeah, it's weird.
Well, I guess it's time, right, for the announcement?
Yeah. Yep. After you say you got work, you said, well, I got this little thing I want to say.
Basically, today's show is interesting for me to do, okay? It was scheduled at first to be the very last show that our producer, Bruce Jacobs, would be here with us. Bruce is heading out to Arizona this coming Monday. He's packing up the old trailer and heading out to a new life in Arizona. However, it's turned into a little bit of something else, Don. I just told you just about 3 or 4 minutes ago, as I did Bruce, and I haven't informed anybody else yet, not even my family. It's something that I thought about ongoing for a long time. In particular, the last several weeks, really giving it serious thought. And I've decided that after today's show, that's going to be it for myself. I'm going to pack it in for a while. The reasoning that I'm going to give everybody out there right now is this. I'm getting involved in a lot of different projects. For one, I think more focus. I met with my agent yesterday, who informed me that we have a number of dates that are going to be booked for my company down in the southern part of the United States, the Carolinas in particular, beginning in February. And to be honest with you and Bruce and everyone else and all the listeners especially, that it's certainly not fun to cover wrestling anymore. When I started the show in 1989, we've been doing this, Donnie, as you know, every week without a break for almost 5 years. And that has been on 3 different radio stations. I feel a little burnt out from covering the business, and believe me, I don't take very much joy or pleasure in reporting on stories as the big one is this week, and that's the arraignment of Vince McMahon and the WWF. That's a story that's been hard to cover. I've been on it pretty much since the start, but it's certainly not a joyful thing for me to cover, as you could readily understand. The situation with WCW, which is the 2 main focuses that have been on this program since '89, and that is covering the 2 big federations. WCW, to be honest with you, I hardly even watch anymore. It's just gotten so bad, and just watching some of that pay-per-view last week just reinforces my belief is that there's nothing happening there for the good of the wrestling business either. It's going to be pretty it's not going to be a good time to cover the wrestling business. So what I'm going to try to do is try to put more focus on the IWAS, and of course I'm involved with the AAA IWC promotion that's here in the Northeast. And I really think that I want to have fun with the wrestling business again. I remember, Bruce, in '89 we used to cover WCW like it was just something that was so spectacular to see and witness each and every week, and the angles and feuds that were running. And that company certainly drained the life out of everyone, every wrestling fan out there. But I decided to take a break for a while, and I've been walking a tightrope, literally, covering this business. In particular, over the last year, as I started to get more involved in the wrestling promotion end of it rather than the reporting end of it. And the sheets that have criticized me, perhaps they're right. I can't objectively report on a trial such as this and then go ahead and try to promote myself as well and truly be objective in the coverage. And instead of getting more criticism from that, I think it's better off for me to do something, and maybe the wrestling business will become fun again, and try to do some new and innovative things with International Wrestling All-Stars. And, of course, the IWC AAA will certainly entertain fans who decide to go on those shows as well. So that's what the deal is, and it's taken some people by surprise. I could tell right off the bat here. And I would like you to stay on the air with us today, Don, if you don't mind.
I wouldn't leave.
And we'll take some calls, and so after today, it's going to be it for a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, there was a lot. I had an agent with a big entertainment company in New Jersey, and he was pushing IWAS to various promoters, and he always painted a very bright picture for me. All right, we're going to get this tour of India, or we're going to go here, and it'll be like, oh, you count on it, and then it doesn't happen. And the same thing with these dates that he's talking about in the Southeast, they never happened. And it was just a tumultuous time. Like, I was barely surviving, and that's why I got out of IWC in '94, because I had a percentage of the shares of stock, percentage of the company. I sold it back to them, and that's kind of how I survived in '94. And also, I had a lawsuit with a company that I won some money from. So I mean, it was kind of like '94 was a horrific year for me.
So in this moment when you're doing it, you feel like there is a lot on the other side that's going to be really good. That IWS is going to be a big thing.
I had optimism that I was going to be able to make a living with these international dates and some of these other shows, and it just, you have somebody who believes in what you're trying to do, but then when the reality is, all right, we're going to do this. I talked to this promoter, I talked to this, and then for whatever reason, they don't happen. I remember we had dates in Alaska, and we had it canceled on us the day before we were all supposed to leave. We had Fairbanks and Anchorage, and I had the Road Warriors back. And that was I believe it was in '94. And we had a whole show, and everyone, the air tickets were bought, the deposits were paid, and then there was a light advance, and the promoter said, I'm not going to do the shows, and that was that. So that happened too. So it was just like you get beat down until you can't get beat down anymore. So you decide to pack it in. What I should have really done is just get myself a freaking job and screw it. But I was like in such a bad headspace, depressed and all of that, that I just couldn't. You get into a funk and you can't get out of it.
Yeah, and it sounds like in this moment, as much as you were getting fed up with a lot of the aspects of it, you were very optimistic about the potential of really focusing all your energies on the one thing.
I was.
It just didn't happen.
Yeah, and I do remember, that eventually I go to work for the agency, putting together, different things with the Peking Circus and other attractions that he had, and
Mhm.
and still working in the office trying to sell some dates. And yeah, so I mean, my life really was in the shitter until I left the wrestling business in totality, and that wasn't until uh, the fall of '96.
Mm. Huh.
That's what makes fodder for a good book, I guess, right?
Yeah, there's these times in between.
Yeah.
You do start reading ads, and you thank LNS for being there from day one and
Yep.
all the way up till the last day.
Mhm.
And you put over a convention that's going on that you mentioned as Tommy Fierra's first
Yes.
convention.
Tommy's first convention. He'd gone to my conventions. I believe I had him on the show to promote it, maybe in one of these lost tapes that I don't have. But yeah, Tommy called. He goes, "Do you mind?" I was like, "You're not stepping on my toes or anything like that. You want to come on the show and promote it? Yeah, I'll promote it for you. We'll
Yeah.
talk about it." And that was his very first one. And now here he's in the middle now of doing some fabulous things, and he had left the business for a while, came back in the 80s WrestleCon and his store that opened up in Jersey. And now he's got his first 90s WrestleCon at the end of this month. By the time this airs, I guess that's going to weekend. It's going to happen, or it's going to whatever. It's happening. But Tommy was just a teenager.
He was a teenager when he was doing this one?
Yep,
Wow. That's really cool.
he was a young kid.
That's cool. And you were putting him over on there too. You were talking about how good it was. So, how cool it looked like it was going to be, and that everyone was going to show up, and you said you were going to be there. So, I don't know if you showed up or not, but
Don't remember.
that does bring you guys to the arraignment of Vince McMahon, and you have some sound bites, and I thought that was really cool. So, I wanted to play you playing the clips.
Excellent.
Okay, and what we're going to do is, of course, the arraignment of McMahon came down with a little bit of a surprise on Tuesday. It was originally scheduled for Wednesday, but of course he had the Survivor Series, and instead of pushing it back to this Monday, they decided to do it Tuesday. McMahon pleaded innocent in Uniondale at the Long Island Federal Court to several charges. Now, we have a couple of sound bites for you here that were taken from the arraignment, and the first voice you will hear is the U.S. Attorney, one of the attorneys that will be prosecuting this case. Sean O'Shea is his name, and he explained some of the charges that will be leveled against, or were leveled against Vince.
Is charged with conspiracy and distribution of steroids, conspiracy to distribute, ranging from 1985 to 1991, distribution of steroids to various wrestlers within WWF.
And yes, just keep it running. He just also explained about the government's option to seize property.
Seizure of property that's involved in drug offenses. So it's merely just carrying out the law.
Carrying out the law is what they say, and that is the government's option to seize property if McMahon is indeed found guilty. Vince did have a short statement to make, and that's upcoming here on the tape as well. Vince McMahon talking about it.
Sometimes life isn't fair, and unfortunately, for me, I believe this is one of those instances. I would like to be able to answer a lot of your questions, however, under advice of counsel, they don't advise me to do so. Although I have a great deal to say, I suppose I shall hold all of what it is I have to say until we step into court.
Yes, and he'll have the opportunity beginning May the 2nd in what will be a circus of a trial for sure. One of the most interesting aspects of this whole thing, an article in the Daily News that came out this Wednesday, the 24th, saying that the Daily News has learned that the wrestler they're talking about is Hulk Hogan, the guy that the indictment alludes to the fact that McMahon gave steroids to. Now, the Daily News is reporting that the wrestler was identified as Hogan, and this is by McMahon's former driver, James Stewart. And that was a statement that was made through his attorney. So if it was in fact Hogan, you're looking at a media circus which is going to compare to no other when this trial actually starts in May.
Yeah.
And what a circus it was.
Didn't you still go to it?
I went to every day.
Yeah, even though you weren't like officially
I had
covering
nothing else to do. And Wade Keller was there, and Dave Meltzer was there, and it was a circus. Fans were in there, packing the courtroom.
Were people trying to get autographs and shit?
Yes.
That's so weird.
McMahon would show up every day in the neck brace. He'd sign autographs. His son, Shane, his daughter, Stephanie, they were just young kids. And it was a circus. And then, of course, with Hogan's presence there, it was just, it was really interesting.
Yeah. That was nuts. And I know that was a big deal too, because that was the whole thing with the first trial, was that Hogan would never do anything like that. And then now he was.
Mhm.
Was any of this, do you think, like sour grapes at all? Like he had left WWF and
Well, he didn't bury Vince. I mean,
That's
that's
true.
the thing. He didn't break that, even though they had a disdain for each other at that time pretty
Yeah,
deeply. He did everything in his power not to bury McMahon.
gotcha. So, all right. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was an interesting trial with everybody in there.
Yeah.
It was just crazy, and George M. Acropolis, and it was almost like one side of the courtroom sitting behind McMahon as he sat at the defense table,
Mhm.
or the I guess he was the defendant at the time.
Mhm.
I mean, all the wrestling fans were sitting on his side of the courtroom,
So funny.
and the pop when he was found not guilty. It was like Hogan winning the title or something, or it
Yeah,
was just people just exploded, and the judge is like, "Silence, silence."
that's funny. Well, because I bet you in their minds, kind of like you were even saying, if Vince goes down, what's the future of wrestling look like?
Yeah,
So they were probably less excited about McMahon being saved and more excited about wrestling being saved. This
yeah.
could take down wrestling.
I guess if I had one of them callers like we listened to a little while ago, he would have said that that the crowd in the courtroom was bigger than any WCW show.
Yeah. Yeah. A bigger house.
A bigger house for sure.
You and Donnie speculate on what they should do. Donnie thinks he should settle. You think he's going to go to trial because he looked smug.
Yeah, and he did. He was
Yep.
silent.
But then Donnie also puts you over, says if it weren't for you, Dave, and Wade, there's a lot of the steroid issue wouldn't have gotten to the size that it did. It's possible it would have showed up and left, but it was, like you said, when Mushnick picked up on your guys' Billy Graham interview.
Oof. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't going away, that's for sure. And the reporting that was done was really good journalism back then. It really was.
Yeah, it was cool. So I'm sure that he hated you.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
Al from Amityville calls in, says it's a sad day learning that you're leaving, and it's hard. And you said that it's hard to do both, to do the promoting side and do the covering of it,
Well,
and that you just weren't having fun.
It was.
Which makes sense.
It felt hypocritical.
Huh? Yep. You do get your second caller here, the familiar Brian from Long Beach.
Wait do you hear him on the next episode, like in '94?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
calls right in right away.
Yep, first show.
Huh.
Talking about how the AAA show on WCW's pay-per-view, it was going to be Chris Cruz and Dr. Mike Lano doing the play-by-play.
Amazing.
That was wrong.
Didn't come to pass.
No, but his voice had gotten a little bit deeper over the 9 months, and
Yeah.
anyway, you'll hear it next week.
I think his voice is starting to change over here too, and I thought it was also kind of funny in the sea of phone calls you get of, "Oh man, can't believe you're going." Brian's questions are so like, I wonder if he's even listening. Like,
You're next.
Hey, what's up, John? It's Brian from Long Beach.
Hey, Brian, how are you?
Good. I got a question for you and Don. What do you feel the media is going to react to now that, from what I understand, Hogan and Piper are going to be testifying against McMahon?
Piper, that's the first I've heard of that. Hogan, I think it's going to be a circus. When I was up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, covering the Zaharian trial in '91, and Piper was there, and Rick Martel, and Danny Spivey, and Brian Blair, that was a media circus, and Billy Graham was there. There was media there from all over. This being, it's in New York, it's in Uniondale, it's a stone's throw away from the Nassau Coliseum. You're going to see something that rivaled Joey Buttafuoco's trial, I tell you that.
And is it true that McMahon's driver is going to be testifying against him?
That's a possibility.
Former driver, I think.
I think as far as predicting who's going to be there and who will not be there, you may see people there that you would never expect.
Yeah, and what do you think about Tully Blanchard's comments on the news this week?
Well, Tully certainly has got a very bitter pill to swallow when he left the wrestling business because of how he left. He felt he was given a bum rap by the WWF and McMahon, preventing him from working in WCW. Tully's turned his life around, and the scene turned. I guess born again is how the aptly way of putting it. But I just said that was one man's opinion on how he felt. He felt he was mistreated, and that was the way he commented on it.
And is it true that Jake the Snake's a born-again Christian and he's back with his wife?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, that's Jake is certainly he's down in Mexico right now, competing for the IWC title. Last night he was wrestling Cian Caras in a championship matchup.
He laughed because you said he was born again, and you're like, okay, yeah, what? It's so funny.
Yeah, Jake had gotten back with Cheryl, and then I got that phone call in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, it's all in my book, Matt Memories, available at Amazon.com. Yeah. Or if you'd like an autograph copy, John at MattMemories.com.
Yeah, and the audio version also comes digitally autographed.
Did you finish it yet?
No, I'm not done yet. Well, because I told you I listened to it in the car. My car broke down, so it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
Joe from Greenport, sorry to hear you're leaving. You said that you were the link that they needed in between the business and such. And you said you're hoping to get IWAS on TV, and you're putting together some TV pilots and stuff.
Yeah, I did do that. The pilot. And I didn't get it on TV, but I got it on TV for a week in Joplin, Missouri.
There you go.
But I put together a wonderful sizzle reel that patrons have access to, and it was a nice little sizzle. I put a lot of work into it, and I thought it was going to lead to other stuff, but it did not.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. He asked what's going to happen with the conventions, and you say that you're going to give an address for a mailing list. Did you hold on to that mailing list for very long?
No.
Yeah.
I might have held it, till I just threw everything out.
Yeah. This clip is Donnie and you talking between a couple of calls. Because after that, I think Tito Partonon calls in, just wanted to wish you luck. It's funny when he called in, you just go, "How'd you get me? How are you new?" He's like, "I have ways." You don't want to know. But this is Donnie talking about some of his favorite moments.
Yeah, Donnie, we go back. Geez, I just want to publicly thank you. You've really assisted me in many, many ways over the last close to 5 years, and I just want to publicly thank you for that.
It's just a lot of fun. It's not even assisting. But, when I think back at the shows on this station, the two that come to mind right away, one, of course, as I've always told you, I thought when Paulie Dangerously was on with the kid whose mother made him call, I believe, from a payphone or somebody else's house because...
Yeah, I think that was one of Bruce's favorite shows, too.
And for whatever reason, they started talking about L.A. Law and pumpkins. I every time I listen to that tape, I've laughed like crazy. And the other one was at the convention when you did the show live, and the guests were on was Ox Baker singing, Cactus Jack, Moolah, Joel Goodhart, Rockin' Robin...
Bruno was on there.
Yeah, I mean that's an all-star cast show, and having tapes of that is tremendous. So there's a lot of good memories there, and I'm sure you can never say never, especially in wrestling, that it'll happen again. But listening to what you're saying about how could you cover something, if it's not so much fun or whatever. I think the biggest question, not so much what goes on with the World Wrestling Federation and McMahon and his legal problems, but the biggest perplexion that I have is WCW, how can they stay in business? Now, we all know they're owned by a subsidiary to Turner Communications and whatnot. But the talent, they have some good talent. They have some pretty bad talent. They don't promote as a wrestling promotion as you would want to promote or as you have promoted. I know the show in Dallas, some people say, well, there was only 100 or so people there. It was a phenomenal show, and the Mexican Midgets was one of the greatest matches I've ever seen. And I'm sorry that a lot of people will never see that, but how this promotion could continue to go on promoting itself as a television show with a wrestling theme, not a wrestling promotion shown on television, and expect the people to continually drop $25 for a pay-per-view or to go to an arena, which they don't even promote locally, so you don't know they're there. It's beyond me how they continue to stay in business, because nobody stays in business to lose money. And sooner or later, I don't care, people tell me they make on commercials, they just baloney. When nobody goes to their shows and you have those expenses, when you put on pay-per-views and you get, such as I read a preliminary figure for the last pay-per-view of 60,000 orders, you cannot continually to lose so much money and still operate. And it's just mind-boggling that WCW is seen by so many people as quote-unquote major league, and they don't promote wrestling, and they stay in business.
Boggles the mind. It really does, Don, and I agree with you wholeheartedly on that point.
It is so crazy to hear just how low WCW is getting before Bischoff really turned it all around.
Yeah. He got lucky.
Yeah.
He got when Turner decided that he was going to just like, that's it, I'm going for it. What do you need? Here's the money. They put that live show. They put Nitro on. It goes head to head with WWE. The Wrestling War started. He gets Lex Luger to be on the first show. I mean, it just kind of spiraled. The screw job in Montreal brought a lot of interest in it. When Mike Tyson got involved with, it just kind of exploded.
Yeah.
And the companies made millions and millions of dollars.
Really
it
cool.
became huge.
Yeah.
It changed the face of the business forever. ECW had a lot to do with it as well when they came into prominence with a different brand and a different style of wrestling, which was mimicked. Really, if you look at even Attitude Era, not as extreme or violent, but certainly, pieces of that type of formatting of wrestling. Interesting. Yeah, but this was the bottom.
Yeah.
93, 94, the bottom of the bottom. And I'm trying to make it in a business that's hitting bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
The timing was off for me.
Yeah. Yeah, you just opened up your own promotion right at the
Yeah. And the thing is like once things really heated up, and when I got out of the wrestling business and took a job and started doing really well, I put it in the rear view mirror, man, and it was like every year got better for me. But the wrestling business exploded, and I'm like, wow, look, I left this maybe at the wrong time, but I was happy again once I got a job.
I wonder though. I mean, was wrestling doing really well at that time, or was WCW and WWF doing really well at that time? Because ECW was the third most popular thing in the country, and it was not making money.
No, they couldn't grow it. They would, as Todd mentioned on this show, he was spending an enormous amount of money on brokered television programming. They just couldn't make it back. They weren't running major arenas, and their coverage on MSG Network and the Sunshine Network down in Florida, you can't sustain a promotion and make it national from that. You can't expect that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Do you think that ECW was like destined to fail? Do you think it ever had longevity underneath it?
Well, what did Donnie just say on that impromptu phone call?
Yeah.
Look what you have. Even though the performers were pretty awesome at what they did, and they put their bodies and risked their bodies, there were good storylines. Paul always knew how to write a good story. But look what was going on internally.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, it's like it peaked and it fell, and it went bankrupt, and Vince McMahon bought it. Like he eventually bought WCW for pennies on the dollar for that videotape library more than anything else. Yeah, it was tumultuous, man. But was the entire wrestling business healthy at that time? No.
Right.
But the spillover made wrestling more popular again.
Yeah.
So it did have a benefit, but not more promotions emerged from it.
Yeah.
And now look what we got. We got one major company that's worth multi-billions of dollars, and you have AEW, a startup with the last 3 years or so, with a billionaire behind it, but a chaotic backstage and a chaotic infrastructure.
Yeah.
with one guy running the show, and the typical wrestling business is, this is my spot. You're not getting it. It's like it's all the same. It's all the same stuff that was happening. It's been happening for years.
Yeah. It
But
feels
it's
like it.
not. I mean, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, with Endeavor and TKO Holdings and all that, this is corporate America. It's a major brand. No one has been able to duplicate what Vince McMahon did, and now it's owned by a conglomerate in this merger. And AEW is gonna stay in business until they don't. They very well may be around for years because you have believers in them and Warner Brothers Discovery. So anyway, it's really an interesting history. You look
Yeah.
back from the '90s to today and everything that's happened.
Yeah. I was thinking about that when we were listening to the ECW thing. And I do think that the story of AEW, no matter what that story becomes, is going to be fascinating
I think so.
you know, you're talking about how the TV product has to be different. All the overseas companies want is the ex-WWF guys.
Yeah, because they were on TV there.
Yeah. Jarvie from North Belmore was asking about Larry getting AAA dolls. Oh, and I guess in LNS, Larry's doing like a closeout sale on a bunch of the stuff that was at the convention. You mentioned you'd be putting full effort into your promotions, and you give addresses for people who want to keep up with wrestling, for the Observer and the Torch, and then your mailing list for whenever you do the next thing. I liked Eric. He said that he's sad to hear you're leaving because you turned a lot of marks into hardcore fans. That was cool.
Educated a lot of people. A lot of
Yeah.
my listeners, even from the beginning, weren't aware of the Observer or the Torch, and they all got smartened up from my show and those newsletters.
Yeah.
I created a monster in a lot of ways in the New York market, anyway.
Yeah, for sure. What year was it was 96 when the big MSG, the curtain call happened, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because you had a whole stadium filled with Smart Mark fans, huh?
Yeah.
Were you there? Or had you
No.
already left New York?
No, 96, I was there. I was working in radio.
Yeah.
But I wasn't at the shows. I didn't start going to the shows really again until when did McMahon take that first bump on Austin? I think that was September of 90. Was that 96 or 97?
Let me see.
Yeah, that was the Monday Night Raw taping. That's when Cactus Jack came back, and the first time he was Cactus Jack in the WWF, and McMahon took that bump. Like I'm thinking September of
97.
It was 97. All right,
Yep.
so that was what month was that? Do you know?
No.
All right, because I got the radio gig in November of '96, and one of my first accounts that I went after was the WWF for advertising, and got them, and they actually got free tickets, and so I started going to shows again in '97.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I just figured since you were still a fan, I wonder if you went to a few things here and there, and the idea of
Well, I certainly got hooked again
Yeah.
when things changed, when they got turned around, the Monday Night Wars and all that. I watched every week. I still was a fan.
Yeah, exactly. That was May of 96 too, so I could have seen it. It's not the most ridiculous thing to think that you might have been like, I'll go to an MSG house show, whatever. But at the same time, you're doing other stuff, not on your list.
You know,
And
I got a
didn't
lot of,
happen.
not that particular show, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I started going regularly once I got that WWF account because I was getting
Yeah.
tickets every show.
Yeah.
Every show. And he even invited me to pay-per-views, like, you want to go to Boston to see SummerSlam? It was like, he'd give me, those chairs those premium chairs. He'd come, we'd have breakfast every week, and here, look what I got for you, So the guy loved me. Hugo Maslick.
That's awesome.
But interesting time.
This is Vinny, and right before Vinny, you kind of mentioned a little bit about the decision that you made again.
Okay.
661-1440 is the number to call, and don't want to get choked up over here. You know, I was up all night, Bruce and Donna, and I was just I could not sleep, and I think I dozed off at about 7:30 in the morning just for about a half hour or so, because in my family last night I was sitting around with them, and I wasn't even discussing this, and they were just saying, "What the hell is wrong with you? Something is wrong," and I just it was in my head, and I gave it a lot of thought and had to make the announcement. Let's go back to the phone. 661-1440 is the number to call here at the program. Hello, you're next.
Hey, John, how you doing?
Who's this?
This is Vinny from Babylon.
Hey, Vinny, how you doing?
Yeah, pretty good today. I just want to say about this couple things about the McMahon case.
Yes.
I think it's going to be real bad in the short term, but is it possible that in the long term it could get steroids out of the sport for a couple of years and maybe get some of these no-talent guys out and get some guys in who could really wrestle?
Well, that's a matter of the promoters, okay? That's a matter of people who are going to be doing shows and anybody who's going to be starting up a business.
Right.
One thing that was made clear, and I read last night in the Torch, and it just hit right on the money. It's up to the promoters out there to hire wrestlers based on talent rather than size.
Are you going to make it an issue in your promotion?
Yes, I am.
And I just had a quick question about Cactus Jack.
Yes.
You're kind of like a friend of his, right?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, has he ever sat down and just looked in the mirror and said to himself, look, if I keep wrestling the way I'm wrestling, I'm going to be in chronic severe pain in my later years? Or has he just sat down and said, I know I'm going to be messed up in the future, but I'm just going to do the best I can do because I love doing it, and I'm just going to keep going until I can't do it anymore?
I think your second part is probably more closer to Cactus's heart. Cactus has a love for the wrestling business. He comes from the old school. He loves this business, every bit of it, and he wants to be the best he can. And he certainly understands the risk involved and the way he works in the ring. That's just a chance that he takes.
So he knows that his future is going to be with a lot of liniments and
and he knows he's not going to be able to do it. He's only 27 years old.
Right, right.
So he knows that he's not going to have no career that's going to last until his mid-40s.
Right. Well, listen,
and he's a very bright guy. Let me tell you that. As far as creatively,
yeah.
I can see after Cactus finishes performing inside a ring to be a booker, to be someone running a promotion, because he is an intelligent guy. And as far as his capabilities and creativity when it comes to putting together a television product, I got videotapes, which Cactus and I had thought about releasing at one time, which we did not, of a lot of different things that he did while he was in college and high school pertaining to the professional wrestling business that if they're ever released, the fans would certainly enjoy. He's a very creative guy.
Right. Well, I met him at your conventions, and he seemed like he is a really intelligent guy, and he chose to put that into wrestling.
Well, he's got one of the best ring psychologies I've ever seen, and I'm sure he'll be a superstar for many years to come, barring injury.
The product that you want to put out for your own promotion,
yeah,
is that kind of along the lines of the old Georgia Championship Wrestling?
What my concept is, and I don't want to disclose too much of it because there are people listening out there, and I don't want them to steal any ideas.
Right.
But my concept is an international company, okay, which is based upon International Wrestling All-Stars, where I want to utilize some of the best talent from international waters, and put them all together for an alliance that is truly international. And I don't want to disclose too much about it because once I put together these shows, it's going to be a different type of program that you've never seen before.
Well, I get the feeling that if you make it, it's going to be a good product. So I really hope you make it.
I'm going to put full effort into it.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Go ahead.
I imagine you were going to do something with a lot of big-name local people as well as just the national branded ones.
The concept was really, let's do a Lucha match, and let's have an All Japan women's match. Let's have, some top indie guys. Let's have a little bit of an international flavor is what I wanted to do with it.
Yeah.
Give people a taste of wrestling throughout the world.
Yeah.
And it was Mexico, Japan, and the U.S. I mean, that was kind of the concept. That's what the pilot was built around. Because the Scissor Reel had All Japan Women Wrestling, it had Lucha Wrestling, it had IWAS footage from Southeast Asia with top American stars. That was the concept.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
And what this last caller said about Cactus, how right on the money.
Yeah,
here's a guy who did all of that and more, and suffering the effects today. He's certainly in pain a lot, but he's out there working hard, and he was still to this day one of the brightest minds in the history of the wrestling business.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was crazy because this is before so much.
It was before so much.
Yeah. And then there you were hinting at the Dude Love tapes.
Yes. When he first showed me those tapes, it blew my mind back then. And I have the cassette. I never digitized it,
No.
But I have it's every inch of that footage, and then the final product and other stuff that he assembled about himself back then. Really is something very, very special.
Cool. Yeah, I always felt like he could have done more. I mean, it's not that we didn't get enough, and not that he didn't give it all, but like you said, his mind. It feels like he could have been in boardrooms. You know what I mean? Like he could have been on creative teams.
He could have been head of creative.
Yeah,
he really could have.
Yeah, absolutely. You know,
but he's happy. He's happy. He's made a wonderful life for him and his family, and he's still out there, and people still love him no matter where he goes and what he does.
Yeah. Yeah. He's beloved for a lot of good reasons. When someone asked what happened to the talk show in Vegas, you mentioned the Mike Tenay show, but then you also mentioned that you found out because WEBD called you to tell you that on Saturday night they were starting a new show at 6 p.m. that was going to be a wrestling show. But at that moment, you had no idea who was doing it. Did anything ring a bell on it when you overheard that?
No, not at all. I don't know.
Couldn't have been that much of an impact. Probably came and went, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, when you're spending over $1,000 a week, it's going to come and go pretty quickly.
Yeah, unless you start doing stuff notable, like what you did was notable, and people started taking notice. Like if you're just an average show, like it'll come and go.
No, there were a lot of shows that followed me, not just EVD. I don't know if there was one, but GBB. Even after I left for the final time, they put on the Phantom. There was another show that actually appeared on once or twice. That was on the air actually for a few years over there at WGBB. And there were shows like mine springing up everywhere.
That's pretty cool. Let's see. Jeff from Great Neck called in. I liked his comment here. He goes, "It seems to be the end of an era." He goes, "We've had you through the good times, the bad times, and the Abrams times."
Yes, the Abrams times, because he was involved with Herb for a little bit too. That caller.
Yeah. You mentioned you'd gotten all the way to getting a date at MSG, but you guys eventually stopped. Do you remember trying to book MSG for IWAS?
For IWAS or IWC?
Or was it triple?
It was
AAA, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually did a show there in '94, not in the big arena, but at the theater.
At the theater. Okay. Yeah, I thought that was cool that you guys pushing that around over there, getting big stuff. You also said you discussed with Paulie and Crockett about what they're doing versus what you're doing, and that you said just at this moment, none of you guys have anything to really offer each other.
No. And that fell apart anyway with Crockett and Paulie.
Yeah. Crockett never ended up coming back, right? Like, he never became part of anything.
Mm-mm.
It's weird his name was just around for so long.
Everybody wanted him to come back. That's why.
Yeah, that's true. And then you get, Pat from Hicksville saying he's disappointed and asked if Hogan's going to get immunity for testifying, but he was just grateful for you. And Peter calls in and asks what's going on with Matt Bourne. You said he's left, so Doink's going to get phased out. And then he asked who Rio Rogers is, and you said Bruce Pritchard. And then this final clip is like the last two and a half minutes or so of the show. Just the way that the farewell kind of came together. A couple of a drop in, a caller, and a sign off that I thought was all pretty poetic. You couldn't have planned it better, I don't think.
And Mickey, let's put Mickey's mic on here for a second also.
John, I want to tell you one thing. Doing the rock and roll after you has been always a pleasure with one of the greatest rock and roll wrestling shows I have ever heard. I've been a big wrestling fan since I'm a kid, and we're very sorry to see you leave this radio station and to be right on before me. I mean, I had a ball. I mean, with Captain Lou Albano that you brought down that day and some of the other wrestlers, you are a credit to wrestling.
Thank you, Mickey.
And we're going to miss you.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate being able to work with you as well. It was a pleasure.
John, we wish you the very, very best. We know there's going to be more things for John Arizzi in wrestling. I mean, some TV, probably some movies, and some other big things that are going to happen. So keep everybody informed, John.
I certainly will. Thank you, Mickey, and we'll talk to you in just a few minutes. Let's take our last call here. Hello. Yes, you're next.
Gee, John, Steve from West Hempstead. What a way to go out to be the last caller.
There you go, right?
I think I had a streak there almost every week that I spoke to you, and it's kind of saddened today to hear your announcement at the beginning of the show that this is the last show. You've given me almost 5 years of wrestling enjoyment with the show and the conventions and the autograph sessions that you had and your newsletter at one point, and you've really made wrestling something enjoyable even through the really tough times of it.
Well, let's do this, okay? This is it as far as radio goes, but there's another avenue of media out there, and it's television, and hopefully next year, by the end of the first quarter of next year, you'll see a weekly television show on one of the stations. I think you'll enjoy it.
Okay, John, I just want to wish you well, and I hope to see you, in '94 on the TV tubes.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Take care now, John.
One of the most loyal listeners, Steve from West Hempstead, and that's going to wrap it up for phone calls. And I want to personally thank Bruce Jacobs, who is leaving for Arizona. And Bruce, I did get your letter of recommendation written here to give you. And what do we got? Another 2 minutes? Another 2 minutes or so? I won't even read this on. I was going to read this on here, but I'm not even going to do that. I'll read it to you afterwards and see if you approve it. But I think you'll like it. And Donny Laible, what can I say? Donny, I'm sure we're going to be
qualify. Bruce, we're going to start calling him Cactus Bruce because he's going out to Arizona.
Yes, he'll be moving to Truth or Consequences. Arizona will be Bruce Jacobs, and Donnie, yourself, I know we'll be working together.
I just want to say I got to cut you off like that because I want to say to all the listeners out there, some people have partners that are shills for them. I have no feeling toward this. I'm going to miss doing a show, but I am John's friend first and foremost. Have been. I've known John since 1975. And anything that John does, I'm always behind because of what other people may have said in the past that don't know John. He's one of the most hardworking, honest, dedicated, and smart, very intelligent, business-wise, smart person. And I'm just happy that I'm John's friend. I'm a fan of his, and I've told him that before. And you could bet John's a survivor, and he'll be around a lot longer than some of the other experts are. And I'm just happy to always help out with anything he does.
Okay, Donnie, and I'm sure that you will be involved in the TV project when we get that off the ground. And that's going to about wrap it up. Coming up next is Mickey B, and I've enjoyed it since April 9th, 1989, and I know I'll see you somewhere down the road in or out of a wrestling ring. We will meet again in 94. Until then, this is John Arizzi. Goodbye.
And we do.
Yeah.
And we do meet again. In August 28th, 1994.
Yeah.
And a little preview, Marsh. I mean, it was interesting to hear that return after 9 months because it kind of was a throwback to some of the earlier days of the radio because it wasn't about promoting IWAS. It wasn't about promoting this. It was based on what I've heard so far and what I've uploaded. It kind of was a little bit of a throwback to what made the show as popular as it was. So I think for the next, until I believe at the end of the year when we wrap it up and decide to recycle or whatever we're going to do with beginning again in April of 89, I think that the listeners of this podcast will, kind of be a throwback to what we did to make the show as popular. It's a lot of guests in studio appearances, callers, 2-hour format. And then it goes away in the beginning of 95. It goes away. But we still have, August, September, October, November, we have some good content ahead for everybody to listen to. So even though this one might have been a little bit of a tearjerker when you hear like this is the end, but it really isn't. We just come back next week, but 9 months later.
Yeah, it's kind of neat too. Like you couldn't stay away for a full year.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
I had new energy.
Yeah,
this one was a downer. Like the demeanor.
Yeah,
but next week is kind of like Shane Douglas just threw the belt. The NWA belt. I'm at ECW reporting live. I'm interviewing Shane. we're taking callers, and we're back, and we're on GBB. The signal's better. The callers are from everywhere. They're all happy, and so it's gonna be really, really fun remainder of the year right here on this podcast.
Yeah. Did you was IWS very done by that time? Were you just
No, it wasn't. I mean, I ran shows. I mean, I partnered with. See, what happened after the pay per view? Scholar and Pena had a split.
Hmm.
There was a lot of internal stuff. I got out at the right time. I mean, before it imploded. And Scholar always says, "You're the only one that made money in this whole thing."
Yeah.
I got out, and it imploded after the WCW pay per view. It really did. But Pena still liked me because I'm the one that put it together in the beginning, brought everybody together, and Conan liked me. So I started promoting some AAA. We were promoting AAA. I did half a dozen shows, 8 shows maybe in 95. And in 94, that was the real down year for me. But 95 was when I really got involved with AAA and promoted in LA, Olympic Auditorium. We did cities, and then the Chicago show that took place. And then at the end of 95, it was kind of like starting to Dwayne a little bit in 96. It was really promoting a few other shows. Arizona with AAA, Arizona State Fair, the infamous Mil Mascaris, give me my plane ticket. And so after, by that time it was then it's over.
Yeah. All right. Because I didn't know if the fire you had for ECW had to do with the idea of helping Paulie with his promotion versus splitting it still.
I just love the product that they were putting out there. It is unlike anything I'd ever seen with the storylines and the development of the characters. So so it's always been in me. I mean, that's why I'm doing this today. It's still I still have a love for it in my own sick way.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I loved that Mickey B got his chance to sit down. I was
He
getting
did.
choked up too, so
He did. Yeah, that was emotional.
It's really cool. But that was it. You were done
Wrap.
forever, done for good, never to be returned until your weekly television show.
Yeah, and that was it, and gone, and then returned back on actually my favorite place to broadcast Pro Wrestling Spotlight was WGBB.
Yeah.
Always was. Great studios, a great location right in West Babylon, and great signal for what I was trying to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, yeah.
All right, that's it for today. I hope everybody kind of got through it okay. I know we did.
Yeah.
And we had the surprise from Donnie, and that was always funny. And who knew we would have, who knew that he would go through that trauma that got him out of the wrestling business.
Relived it.
Holy shit.
And the way he kept just being like, and then he would intermittently be puking again. And I was like, what?
I want a roast beef sandwich and no cheese.
Oh
my God.
Those are the stories that we're here for.
Yeah, that is very true. All right, my friend, it's always good to see you. Let everybody know where they could find you on social media and what you're up to these days, except for your car problems.
Yeah, you can't find me on the road.
No.
You can find me on X at Ref Marsh, Instagram on Marsh Ref. And, you can find me over here, youtube.com/Queen of Carnage for the Medusa weekly show too. And that's it. That's what it'll be.
Excellent. All right, my friend, we will see you next week. And that'll about wrap up this edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast. Don't forget to join our groups. We got plenty of them. We got 3 on Facebook. One is about the Pro Wrestling Spotlight and Radio Show. We have a public page called Matt Memories. We got a private group. They're John Arezzi's Matt Memories as well. Our YouTube channel, there's tons of content on there, as well as this show that we do every week is up there on YouTube for you. YouTube.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight. Don't forget to subscribe to that channel now. And if you're listening to this podcast on Apple, why don't you give it a 5-star review, and why don't you write a little review about what we've done here. That would really help us out as well. If you would like a signed and numbered copy of my book, Matt Memories, send an email to me, john@mattmemories.com. $25. You'll get a signed and numbered copy of it. And it's a pretty good deal if you'd like to relive my story with the Matt Memories book. And the sister podcast, a new episode is out there for everybody. It is a special bonus show of Memories from Madison Square Garden, where Carrie Silkin, former owner of Ring of Honor, myself, and Tim Poutre, we go over the biggest names of wrestling that never appeared at Madison Square Garden. That's available wherever you get your podcasts, so check that one out as well. It is written and researched by Richie Garcia, co-hosted by Tim Poutre. I want to thank our producer, as always, our creative director, Marsh. And thanks to Patreon executive producers Anthony Pyrus and Joe Holloway, and for all the patrons for your support helping with the production costs for this show. Until next week, when we jump into 1994, this is John Rizzi for the Pro Wrestling Spotlight.